Welcome to Lesson 2. I'm Mr. C. Today's exercise is going to be another fairly simple one. All you'll need is a sheet of letter-sized paper, a graphite pencil, a ruler, a box of crayons or colored pencils, whichever you have or prefer, and your color wheel from Lesson 1. Now I'm going to show you some photographs. These are photographs of landscapes, cityscapes, and seascapes. What's the same in each of these photographs? Can you tell me what's different? This photograph is of a seascape. What is the main focus of this picture? In the landscape, it's of a countryside or a farm or a forest. The cityscape, buildings, and lights reflecting off of them. So where is the focus of this picture? Is it in the foreground, the midground, or the background? Here's another landscape. Compare the tree on the left to the trees on the right. Look at the shadows. Look at the colors that the artist has left in there. Would you say they're more intense on the left or on the right? When the colors and shadows are darker or more intense, does it make it look as though things are closer to you or further away? Here's another. Would you call this a landscape or a cityscape? What's the focus of this picture? Is it in the foreground, the midground, or the background? Here's another. What would you call this one? A cityscape or a seascape? What's the focus of this photograph? Think about it before you answer. Last one. This is definitely a seascape, right? What's the focus of this one? Is it the rocks on the left or the boat on the right? What makes you say that? Lots of pictures to look at in this one. Okay, let's get ready for our exercise. I want you to pick one of the photographs that we've looked at. I'm going to pick the landscape on the left here, from the very first slide that we looked at. Now, you don't have to pick that one. Pick any one you like. Just grab your materials and let's get drawing. So set your paper in the exact same orientation as the picture. A lot of them are going to be landscape or horizontal. Mine is vertical, so I'm going to set it in a portrait orientation. The first thing I'm going to draw is that horizon line, that horizontal line down the middle. And then I'm going to try and start blocking in the very basic shapes of what I'm going to draw. If you want to make sure your shapes are accurate, a fun trick is to sometimes take your picture and the photograph that you're basing it on and flip it upside down like this. That way you can guarantee you're drawing shapes instead of details, instead of things you think you're drawing the right way. This can be applied to drawing people from photographs or landscapes like this. See, all I'm doing is arranging all the shapes the way that they are in the photograph. I'm not trying to draw trees or hills or sticks or stumps. I'm trying to draw just shapes. And I'm trying to get them to be placed in the picture where I want them to be. Looks a little messy, huh? Don't worry. It'll all work itself out. Now I want to put in my first layer of color. I'm going to stick with browns right now. And using the photograph as a guide, I'm going to try and make sure that all of my colors closest to the foreground, that's the layer that's closest to us as the viewer, are the most intense. So that's why I'm starting there, with the big tree and the ground at its base. All the sketching that I did before is going to give me a guideline to figure out where I'm going to put all the brown, all the colors that I need for this particular picture. Now I'm starting to move into the midground there. But mainly I'm trying to work my way back and forth using just brown. Now you can see that I'm picking something a little bit darker. I think that's a dark red. I'm going to try and darken that area, the shadow side of those trees, just so the shadows get a little bit darker, at least on that side of the tree. You see, those are form shadows on that side of the tree. Remember those? So I'm putting in some orange now. I'm examining the colors and the intensity of that color for the leaves and the fallen leaves that are on the ground layer. Throwing in some yellow now. Going back and forth, again, using the sketch that I put down earlier as a guide to figure out where I can fill in those layers of color. Eventually, these colors are going to start blending into each other. And trying to keep the number of colors I use to a minimum. So far, I've only used 4: dark brown, a dark red, orange, and yellow. Now we come in with a 5th color, green. And a little bit of blue. In this case, it's a dark blue, like an ultramarine. I find that blue really works well for outdoor shadows. Now we're starting to layer in some green into the leaves of the main tree. Again, working back and forth. A little bit of blue overlaying some of the green, some of the yellow. But it's getting clear which side of that main tree in the foreground is in shadow and which is in light. I'm not worried about drawing leaves, as you can tell. I'm mainly sort of scribbling, doing like little zeros, back and forth, and eventually they all kind of blend together. Eventually, all those little nonsense marks kind of turn into beautiful shapes just made out of color. It's almost like we're painting with a pencil. Moving back into the midground now, I'm taking a sort of a soft green and I'm putting down layers of dark green in between to suggest shade, orange to suggest fallen leaves, as well as some dark green and some dark brown to suggest shadow. And of course, all these colors kind of get overlaid on top of each other. They get blended together. Now we're shifting into the background. You might notice that things are becoming very cool. There's a lot of blue back there. Well, that happens a lot in landscapes. Colors tend to get stronger or more intense the closer to the foreground you get. As you move towards the midground, they tend to become muted, or they tend to lose their intensity. When we get to the background, they tend to shift very strongly towards the cool end of the spectrum. They tend to become a little bit more blue, or going back now to the main tree, now you can sort of see that I am starting to instill a bit more detail in there. You can see that I'm starting to put little knobs of dark green or dark brown in where the colors and the shadows kind of meet to suggest leaves, individual little patches of shadow. But I'm only doing it where the shadows of the main shapes tend to become strongest, where the light tends to end. I'm keeping my details very controlled. You don't need to make these super busy. This whole exercise should really only take you about 40 minutes to complete. And it doesn't need to look like this. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. So if you get a little frustrated, or if you feel unsatisfied with the way that your drawing is progressing, that's okay. It's actually perfectly natural. And do you know the reason why? It's because you're learning while you're drawing. This drawing right now is going to be nowhere near as good as the drawing that comes after it. And that drawing isn't going to be anywhere near as good as the drawing that comes after that. Art is more of a journey than an actual thing. I want you to enjoy the process. It can be frustrating. It can make you kind of sad or a little bit angry sometimes if you're not drawing as well as you would like to. But again, that's completely natural. Any frustration that you might feel towards your art or how you are progressing in your art, it is something that all artists share. It's something that we all have in common. Yes, even Mr. C has had a lot of frustration when it comes to his art. But don't worry, it gets better over time. Now I'm starting to get into the last little minute details, that means little details, by laying in the last little bit of color and separating the foreground from the midground by that last little layer of green. Putting in individual blades of grass or sticks until the point where I finally feel satisfied with my drawing based on that photograph. So, what ideas did you learn today? Thank you very much for watching.